Hello and welcome back. My name is Ralph Clayton, and I'm your host. Today's episode is a little different. I want to read from and speak around a book I published. It's called The Volumetric Time Model: Why the Future Feels Decided. This book is the starting point for a larger series, but at its core, it begins with a very simple feeling. A feeling a lot of people already know, not as theory, not as mathematics, as experience. That strange moment when something becomes clear just a little too late. You can see what is coming. You can name it. You can feel the shape of it. And yet somehow, even with all that clarity, you cannot change it. That is the feeling this book is trying to take seriously. So in this episode, I want to walk through that idea slowly, not in a rushed way, not in a technical way, but in a way that lets the central intuition breathe. Because I think many people already know this pattern in their bones. They just have not had a precise language for it yet. So let's begin. You are hearing these words at a precise coordinate, not a vague now, not a poetic instant floating somewhere outside reality. A coordinate, a place and a moment along your own path. That may sound abstract at first, but it matters more than it seems. Because one of the deepest shifts in modern physics was the collapse of the old idea that the universe contains one single shared present, or one global now, one cosmic clock. Einstein broke that picture apart. What counts as now for one observer is not necessarily what counts as now for another. Not if they are moving differently. And not if gravity bends their clocks differently. The universe does not hand out a single official present. It gives local moments, local clocks, local coordinates. And when you take that idea seriously, the old image of time as a river starts to weaken. From inside experience, a time feels like flow. It feels like the future is being created. It feels like the present arrives, shines for an instant, and disappears. But from a larger perspective, physics points towards something more structural. Not a flowing line. A geometry. A four-dimensional structure. A finished space-time. A bounded volume. In that picture, reality is not waiting to be written. Reality is already there as an admissible structure. A past, present, and future are not separate substances. They are regions of the same geometry. What changes is not existence. What changes is access. And that distinction is everything. Because the first mistake people make when they hear about a completed space-time is to leap straight into fatalism. If it is already there, then nothing matters. If it is complete, then agency must be an illusion. If the future is part of the structure, then we are just being dragged through a script. That reaction is understandable, but it is too fast. And more importantly, it misses the real problem. The real problem is not whether the volume exists. The real problem is what you can reach from where you are, what remains accessible. What signals can actually get to you in time? What actions can still couple to outcomes strongly enough to matter? What windows are still open when the meaning finally arrives? That is the actual human problem, not existence. Access. Think of the night sky. When you look at a star, you are not seeing the star in some universal present. You are seeing old light. A message that left long ago and traveled across space before it reached your eye. The star may still be burning. It may have changed. It may be gone. Your seeing does not change the star, but it changes you. And that is one of the first lessons of a finished universe. Access is not the same thing as existence. Truth can exist far away and arrive late. Now bring that down from astronomy to everyday life. The same pattern appears everywhere. A storm forms offshore. The models are accurate early. The forecast is right. The warning exists. But the roads clog, the systems lag, the message arrives, and the strongest window for action is already shrinking. You were informed. But being informed is not the same as being empowered. Or take medicine. A harmful process begins silently in the body. The data may detect it early. A model may flag it early. The pattern may be visible before symptoms become undeniable. And still, the appointment is later. The scan is later. The intervention is later. The forecast comes first. The lever comes late. Or take something even more intimate. A relationship. Sometimes the ending becomes legible long before the ending arrives. Replies slow down. Tone changes. Repairs get postponed. Laughter changes shape. A silence grows longer. You can often predict the direction well before the actual break. But prediction is not the same as steering, because the real lever was earlier, smaller, less dramatic. A conversation before resentment hardened. An apology before pride solidified. A repair before the loop got too long. So this pattern repeats across scales. To storms. To bodies. To relationships. And the repetition matters. Because it suggests that one of the defining conditions of modern life is not simply ignorance. It is delayed access. We live in a civilization that can see farther than ever before. We have instruments that extend observation across continents and markets and ecosystems and biological systems. We have dashboards, forecast models, classifiers, risk systems, predictive tools. We can often describe what is coming before it arrives. And yet, all across life, people keep running into the same eerie experience. The future becomes clearer at exactly the moment it becomes harder to change. That is the emotional center of this book. And that is why I say the future does not arrive with explosions. It arrives politely. The lights stay on, but the systems remain stable. The language remains calm. The warnings may even come early. And still, somehow, nothing meaningful can be changed. That is not mysticism. It is not conspiracy. It is not necessarily even malice. Often, it is timing. Timing plus delay. Timing plus noise. A timing plus short windows. Timing plus weak coupling between action and outcome. This is where the volumetric time model begins. A VTM treats reality not as a flowing river, but as a completed structure. A bounded volume containing admissible histories. That does not mean everything is equally available to you. Quite the opposite. The whole model is built around the idea that human beings do not experience the full structure directly. We experience delayed, noisy fragments of it. Signals arrive late, levers appear briefly, windows close quietly, and because of that, a very strange condition can emerge. You can see what is coming, you can predict it, and yet you cannot reach it in time to alter it. That condition has a name. F.A.W.P. A forecasting without power. And I want to be very clear here. It is not just a poetic phrase. It is not just a mood. It is not just a way of complaining about modern life. It names a specific regime. A regime in which prediction remains strong even after influence collapses. The future stays readable, while becoming operationally unreachable. That is the key point. Readable but unreachable. Visible but not steerable. Legible but no longer open in the way that matters. And once you see that distinction clearly, a lot of modern life starts to look different. A warning that arrives after the last meaningful branch is not really a tool. It is a receipt. A button that lets you acknowledge something without giving you any real path to alter the outcome is not a choice. It is decoration. A forecast presented in place of a lever is not empowerment. It is theater. That is why the model forces us to ask harder questions. Not just, was the outcome predictable? But, when did the signal arrive? When was the lever actually available? When did the meaningful window close? Those are different questions, and they matter morally as well as technically. Because once you start thinking this way, a responsibility itself begins to look different. Modern systems often behave as if knowledge alone is enough, as if seeing a warning means you had a fair chance, as if being notified is the same thing as being equipped. But it is not. The first honest question in any judgment is not simply what did you know. The first honest question is whether a real lever existed inside a real window. Could you still reach the branch point? Was the path still open when it became visible? Was the signal clear enough to act on? Did the system preserve reversibility long enough to matter? If not, then blame starts to become superstitious, not responsibility. Superstition, because hindsight is cheap. Hindsight can always point backward and invent an imaginary moment of total agency. But real agency is local. It lives in short loops. It lives where signals arrive early enough to be used. It lives where actions still couple strongly enough to outcomes. It lives where reversibility exists long enough to be reached by an ordinary human being with finite attention, finite energy, and finite bandwidth. That is why this book is not arguing for helplessness. It is arguing for precision. There is a big difference. To say that leverage is local is not to say that nothing matters. It is to say that what matters depends on timing. It depends on access. It depends on whether the loop still answers. And once you understand that, human dignity moves to a different place. Not to fantasies of total control, not to the impossible dream of mastering every outcome, but to craftsmanship. And I use that word very deliberately. Craftsmanship means protecting the loops that still answer. It means making important signals detectable. It means reducing friction where friction destroys real action. It means keeping high-stakes choices reversible for as long as possible. It means respecting the limits of the human organism. It means not treating people as if they are infinite processors who can absorb infinite prompts, infinite complexity, and infinite delay at zero cost. It means admitting that timing is part of justice. Timing is part of design. Timing is part of ethics. And timing is part of power. Because power is not only about force. Power is about access to effective windows. Power is about who gets the early signal, who gets the real lever, who gets enough time for the action to matter. And just as importantly, who does not. In some cases, the loss of leverage is structural. Distance creates delay. Physics creates delay. Energy creates delay. Some doors close quickly no matter how wise or disciplined you are. But in other cases, the loss of leverage is artificial. Signals are flooded. Choices are delayed. Interfaces are built to simulate agency rather than preserve it. Reversibility is withheld. Critical action is buried behind friction. By the time the system invites you to respond, the response can no longer alter the outcome in any serious way. And that matters. Because the future can be made unreachable without anyone ever announcing that fact. That is one of the darker lessons here. Agency does not always disappear dramatically. Sometimes it erodes quietly. Everything still looks normal. The lights are on. The forms are there. The button still exists. The consent box still appears. The dashboard still updates. The warning still gets delivered. And yet the real branch has already passed. That is why I describe the modern condition not as a collapse into chaos, but as a smooth slide into ornamental control. You can still move. You can still respond. You can still perform action. But the coupling has weakened. The outcome no longer bends. The gesture remains. The leverage is gone. And what makes this especially cruel is that prediction can remain strong precisely in those moments. In fact, sometimes prediction gets stronger. Why? Because as the future narrows, it becomes easier to read. When a process approaches failure, the number of plausible paths shrinks. When a corridor has fewer exits, the crowd becomes easier to predict. When a system nears a cliff, legibility can improve even as steerability collapses. This is why late clarity feels so awful. Not because the future is invisible, but because it is visible and untouchable. That is the signature feeling, not ignorance, not confusion. Clarity without leverage. But this book tries to make that feeling precise, not as a metaphor, as a framework, an operational framework. That part matters too. Because I do not want this to live at the level of vague philosophy. The volumetric time model is meant to be testable. Its claims are operational. Its thresholds are measurable. Its failures can be specified in advance. If the model is wrong, it should fail honestly. It should fail under measurement. It should fail cleanly. No mysticism. No hiding behind mood. No appeal to belief. Just access, delay, signal, a control and time. That is why the framework introduces ideas like the agency horizon. The agency horizon is the measurable boundary beyond which actions no longer influence outcomes in a meaningful way. Before that horizon, action still couples. After that horizon, action may continue, but its effect collapses into background noise. And once you begin to think in those terms, you can start measuring something that many people have only felt in a vague emotional way. You can begin to ask, where does influence die? Where does the signal remain, but the steering vanish? Where is the point beyond which the future remains readable, but no longer reachable? Those are powerful questions, not only for science, for life, for medicine, for institutions, for technology, for finance, for relationships, for governance, for design, for moral judgment. Because once you can separate forecasting from steering, you stop confusing awareness with agency. And that confusion is everywhere. We praise systems for warning people, even when the warning arrives after the real window is gone. We assign responsibility downstream, even when access was removed upstream. We talk about informed consent in environments where information arrives late, options are fake, and reversibility is weak. We treat visibility as if it were equivalent to power. But it is not, and people feel that. Even when they do not have a theory for it, they feel it in their bodies. They feel it in the quiet nausea of understanding too late. They feel it when the dashboard turns red and the outcome still unfolds exactly as predicted. They feel it when they are told there was an early warning, but the meaningful branch point had already passed. They feel it when their own life becomes most legible at the moment it becomes hardest to steer. That is not always a personal failure. Often, it is geometry made intimate, a structural pattern entering lived experience. So what is the aim of this book? Clarity, not comfort. Clarity. Either the volumetric time model survives contact with data, or it fails honestly. Either distinction between readable futures and reachable futures holds up, or it does not. Either forecasting without power is a real operational regime, or it is not. That is the standard. And I think that standard matters, because too much public language swings between empty reassurance and empty doom. This model is trying to offer something stricter than both, and a way to think carefully, a way to ask where leverage actually lies, a way to distinguish genuine action from theatrical action, a way to measure when responsibility is real and when it has been assigned after the window was already removed, and most of all, a way to recover the seriousness of timing, because timing is not a detail. Timing is the hidden currency of power. If you have ever felt warned too early and trapped too late, this book is for you. If you have ever felt the strange pain of seeing what was coming or being unable to touch it in time, this book is for you. If you have ever sensed that modern life is full of notifications, forecasts, dashboards, alerts, acknowledgements, and rituals of awareness, while actual leverage keeps shrinking, this book is for you. And that is why I wrote it. Not to sell fate, not to preach helplessness, but to name a condition that has become common. A condition in which the future feels decided, not because of magic, not because of destiny, but because access is delayed, windows are brief, and leverage is local. That is the opening. That is the core intuition. And that is the road into the volumetric time model. Thank you for listening. This has been a reading and reflection from my published book, The Volumetric Time Model, Why the Future Feels Decided. And in the next episode, we can go one step deeper, from the feeling itself into the mechanism, from the experience of late clarity into the structure of agency horizons, delayed signals, and the geometry of shrinking control. Until next time.